Battista Locatelli. I love saying your name, by the way. That's a fun name to say. He is better known as Joyful Carnivore. If I can get the screen to go clear. What happened? Come on. Anyway, I promise you that says Joyful Carnivore right there. And he started with keto, and now he's in the carnivore, has lost 100 pounds. Brandon, his partner, has also lost 30 pounds.
50 now, 50.
Oh, 50 now. Okay, well, you need to update your Instagram, bro.
I know. He's kicking my ass.
He's a recovering addict, and we're going to learn all about that. He's been clean and sober and serene since September of 2016. So this is 5 years that you've been clean. You're coming up on your 5-year anniversary. And today you're just a shining example. And I love the whole concept of joyful carnivore, because people have said about your work, wow, like with all he's been through and he's joyful today, like what's my problem? So you're doing a lot of good work out there, which is why I'm glad you're on here on my show today. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So yeah, you're pretty epic, right? You've been around.
I had a few years under my belt. Yes.
Yeah. So I did a lot of research on you, and I'm just shocked at all of the information you put out there. So first and foremost, I just want to thank you for being a voice in the community to get, I think one of the podcasts I heard you speak on, all the research and all the stuff that comes out there. There's so many nutritionists, right? And then there's bodybuilders, and then there's mitochondria, and there's all this information to absorb. But when you are just like little old me who shops at Walmart and who wants to get healthy, and you need to somehow process that information, it can be quite challenging I mean, if anything, it's overwhelming. And you look at it and you're like, so no, I'm just going to stay where I'm at. That's a lot more comfortable than having to do, like, I didn't know I was going to like be in a university now. Like, I'm taking college classes.
Dude, as soon as I got into the community, of course, it's been a very long time ago now, but even then, in the dearth of not having really any social media at the time, which I'm glad when I started, we had these things called forums. We had That's how long ago. The iPhone wasn't even invented yet.
Yeah.
It was such a dearth of information. But then when you did, like you said, find information, read books, it was all this wah, wah, wah kind of language. And so I'm like, my niche is going to be translating that. And so I've tried to be that over the years. So thank you for that. Thank you so much.
Excellent job. Yeah. So I'll get into a little bit about my journey. So let's see. I guess, I'm very vulnerable and transparent about my life. And I start off with when I was a child. I was sexually molested for over a decade. I grew up in a house that had a lot of domestic violence. My parents were selling methamphetamines out of the freezer.
Wow.
So and I kind of tried to rebel against that, right? Like I was like, my dad was a punk rocker. My mother was a cocktail waitress. She also was trying out to be a showgirl. And so we grew up in Las Vegas, and it was just a different time. My dad was 15 years old when he had me, and my mom was 17 and a half.
Wow.
So they were children, but at that age, back then, 1977, they were grown-ups. My dad was working, 16 hours a day. He owned 2 condominium complexes. My grandfather was fresh off the boat, came over here to America, tried to have a go at the Metropolitan Opera. He was an opera singer. He didn't get a really good thing. He cut an album with Pavarotti before Pavarotti was actually famous back in 1952. Then he goes out to Los Angeles to try to make it big in Hollywood, and then comes to Las Vegas. And they came to a show there called Jubilee, and it's actually still there. And it was so anyways, he went there to go become a singer. They canceled the show 1 week later. He had already moved his entire family there. They walk into a little tiny strip mall. In that strip mall is a cockroach infested bar called, oh God, what was the name of it? Anyways, they walk in there. My dad says, we should buy this. My grandfather goes, okay. They go in there and they basically turn a 4-seat bar into 160-seat banquet-style Italian restaurant, which is now known as the oldest Italian restaurant in Las Vegas. So, and we literally had an escape route from the Flamingo Hotel, where Bugsy Siegel had an underneath ground thing that went up directly into my grandfather's office. So it was just a crazy way to be raised.
Yeah, I mean, even if it was just that, without the abuse that you went through, even if it was just that, that's pretty crazy and traumatic already. Some of the things.
Yeah. I mean, exciting too, right? Like we had Prince and Meg Ryan and Ryan O'Neal and Farrah Fawcett and all the presidents came through. We would close the entire restaurant down for the presidents. My grandfather sang "Happy Birthday" at a couple of the inaugurations. Like it was just an intense. Clint Eastwood, grabbing my mom's stomach while she was pregnant with me. Bill Cosby making pasta with my grandmother in the kitchen. The Rat Pack, Sammy Davis Jr. and so it just the list goes on, and it was intense, and work was everything, and my parents got hooked on drugs, and while they were doing drugs, sexual abuse was happening to me. So I was being violated, and I was living in the constant come down of the drugs, and I was being babysat with cartoons, and I was an only child, so I didn't have anyone to really talk to about what was happening. And so when I went to school, I would present completely differently. You would actually not even know that at school that I had all this going on behind the closed doors. And
The human brain has a great way of being resilient. When you're going through stuff, you can
surviving.
go to another world and present yourself, and you're exemplifying it to an extreme degree. But people even do this subtly, like if there's like angry, like yelling at home, they go to school, and you would never know because the kid might be on the honor roll,
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, and you're embarrassed, right? You don't want people in anywhere to know what's happening. It's embarrassing. So there was already this shame, guilt complex that you're different, something's wrong, and because obviously I'm going on my bike to other kids' houses, and it wasn't perfect, but they had like after school snacks. Like I remember when this mom was like, "Would you like a little cup of yogurt after school?" I was like, "Huh? What is this? You guys feed after?" I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll have 3 of them, please."
Yeah.
Because in our house we had condiments. We would throw together a rice cake and some mustard and a Taco Bell sauce packet, and that was dinner. Because we were poor,
Yeah.
really, really, really poor. Government cheese, food stamps, and so because they spent all their money on drugs,
Yeah.
and so just growing up in that, it was insanity, and it became normal for me to almost have these like split personalities. I would go to school. I'll just kind of go into the future a little bit. I was in high school, and I'm like on student body. I'm head of thespians club, so I'm doing all the musicals. I'm doing all the choir performances. I'm doing madrigals. I'm choir council president. So I'm not just secretary. I have to go to the top all the way. I'm honors roll. I'm in government. We're traveling with government, going back to DC.
You know what you did, Battista? You covered up your pain with achievement, because in a small way, your trauma, the response you did to it was, okay, yeah, shitstorm at home,
Yeah.
but real world, I'm going to excel and everybody's going to laud me, because you weren't getting the laud at home. You weren't getting anything communication wise. You didn't have any companions. So school was your outlet for saying, okay, here's a whole nother life. You probably did feel schizo growing up.
Yeah, because when you can't, well, you get it almost down to temperature. You come home, you take the temperature of the house. And then that if whatever degree it's at, how then to respond and or to react and or to get out of the house and go to a friend's,
Yeah, I do know that. I was abused, as you know my story. I've told it many times online and in podcasts. And yeah, if I came home and saw a certain look on my dad's face, I hid. I was
Yeah.
like, out of his sight, because if I'm in his sight, I will become his punching bag.
Yeah, exactly. And you can also, I could tell too what gear they were in as far as whether it was alcohol, if they were tipsy and they were in that gear. Because
Yeah.
if they were kind of over the hump drunk, then I could still be there. Because then they were just going to be sloppy somewhere.
Although some of the drugs they were on, like you couldn't tell what drugs. Was it meth they were on? What were they taking?
Everything under the sun. My dad, during the early years, was doing angel dust. He was shooting cocaine, and mom was always snorting cocaine. It was very prevalent back then. In Las Vegas, it was very
The,
common.
the 1980s, it was crack cocaine that was kind of very common. That, yeah, that's what you ended up on. Yeah.
Yeah. And boy, oh boy, was it addictive. And I look back because I'm doing social work, and we do all these videos on the epidemics, from back then and the war on drugs. But I mean, it was whoever created that knew what they were doing, because it was
Yeah.
on and flying. Freebasing is what they called it back in the day.
What do they call it?
Freebasing.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Freebasing. Yeah, man, back in the day, like, and what was funny was my dad didn't drink alcohol or do drugs. He was actually a cop. And so, yeah, so he was the one that would go into schools with the big board of all the different kind of drugs and say, all right, kids, don't do this. So,
Yeah, at the assemblies. Yeah, they would do the assemblies. Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
yeah,
Nancy Reagan, don't do drugs.
yeah, just say no.
Just say no. Yeah. This is your
Sorry,
brain on drugs with the frying egg.
sorry, Nancy, that didn't work.
I know. I tried.
Yes,
Um,
try.
so senior year, I had ballooned up to 333, 36 pounds. I was really heavy.
Because,
Just the pain, and I was trying to. I hadn't touched drugs yet. I hadn't even gotten there yet.
oh yeah, you touched sugar.
Sugar. Yeah.
That first drug.
Yes.
A lot of us don't want to recognize this, that the gateway to hard drugs isn't right into hard drugs. Like a lot of people are like, well, marijuana is the gateway to harder drugs. I don't believe that, by the way. But I think sugar is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I already had this kind of like I had this incorrect concept of what love was, because I was being sexually violated. I believed that touch, that even though it was violating me, and I had out of body experiences in order to get through it, I still believed that was love. So now in my formative kind of, puberty age, I'm starting to conceive that in order to get love, I have to have sex, which then kind of builds this whole, like, not correct, this unhealthy construct of what love is, that I would then have to continue to kind of battle for the next couple of decades, because I had no concept of what real intimacy was.
Look, you got exposed at a very impressionable age to some horrific activity that nobody should have gone through. By the way, was your abuser male or female? I'm just curious.
Male.
Yeah, so the male was dominating his sexuality and power over you.
There was more than one of them, yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and then I also I had a woman like 13 or 14. She was a best friend, but she tried to like basically rape me. And yeah, so it was all bloody. Some of it was just just normal child stuff, but then the actual molestation just went on between multiple people for quite some time. And I had this concept that I wasn't enough, I wasn't lovable, I wasn't worthy.
Yeah. It's so I can't imagine that, by the way. What I went through was horrific, getting and berated and all that, but and my dad did touch me one time very inappropriately in a sexual way. I'll tell the story. I have nothing to hide. I talk very vulnerably as well.
Me too.
I came home from school one day, and he's like, or no, I got out of the shower in the morning that day, and he's like, you aren't in there long enough. And I'm like, I took my shower. I don't even know how long I was in there, 5-10 minutes. And I took my shower. I'm done. What do you mean? Well, when you get home, I'm going to show you how to bathe.
Yeah.
And I was like, what does that mean? So like I get home, I have no idea. I get home, he says, strip off all your clothes and get in the shower.
Yeah.
And I'll get in there with you.
Yeah.
He was naked. I was naked. And he's got a washcloth with soap, and he's rubbing hard over all the everything.
Yeah.
I never felt so disgusting in all of my life. And so I can't imagine what you went through. One time still traumatizes me.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine having it happen over 10-year period.
Real Good Foods is one of the fastest growing frozen food companies in the U.S. Everything they make is nutrient dense, high in protein, low in carbs, and made from real food ingredients. They make food for every occasion: breakfast sandwiches, poppers, enchiladas, entrees, and pizza. So whether you're on a keto diet, trying to cut back on your carbs, or just trying to eat healthier, they make super convenient and tasty options. RealGoodFoods.com and at Real Good Foods on social media.
Yeah, it was a rum dinger. You start to become used to it, and the sick thing is you start to crave it. There was a point in the beginning, like my first, I think, was 4 or 5 years old. I remember having the out of body experience, and just it was above and beyond traumatizing. But then as like I got into puberty, it started to become a thing where I was looking forward to it, because you're developing sexually, and you know,
Yeah.
it's natural. So.
What's that syndrome when you've been captured and then you start to fall in love with your captor? Or
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's just like that.
Yeah.
I forget that. Somebody's going to put it below so I can remember.
Yeah, well, and then the crazy thing is, I think it's just part of the brain, is you have to survive.
Stockholm Syndrome, that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. You have to survive, though. You have to somehow survive, and so the best way to survive is to somehow make an optimistic, positive thing out of it. So eventually, you just get used to it.
But you know what? That doesn't come without consequences. Like, that's the bad thing. You adapt, so you get used to it, so you can get through it and go through other universes, you said. But man, that has lasting effects that goes well into your life. Probably you're still doing it today.
Yeah. So I ended up senior year, Christmas Eve, my very first hit of marijuana, and I was like, "Woo, IRO!" Everyone. It was a Filipino house, and they had all the food, chicken adobo. It was amazing. We had this big celebration, and so that was cool. That was what it was, but it was not the best, because I was already 300 and some odd pounds, and now I'm smoking weed and going to Taco Bell 3-4 times a day, gigantic Mountain Dews, and I'm blowing up even more. And so then it was that right before we got out, right before we graduated, the April of 1995, I smoked. My friends were in the very front of this Nissan. I was in the back cab, and they pulled out tinfoil and a tutor, and they were smoking the stuff off that. And I was like, I want to try. And they were like, no, you don't. And I was like, I do. I'm like, what are you guys doing? This is so interesting. And they're like, you don't want to try, Battista. And I was like, they begged me not to. Finally, they gave in. I did. We went and saw a movie. We smoked cigarettes inside the movie theater. We were the only ones in there. And I felt like I had arrived. Every methamphetamines. Every feeling of emotion, and it was like, whoosh, and it was just this overwhelming, amazing. I can't even describe it. I could sing better. I could do homework better. I was 18 years old. I mean, I was writing notes in between my girlfriends at school. They were like little biographies. I was just staying up 4 or 5 nights. I didn't look like crap the next day. The skin is still youthful, and it was just amazing. And then I had started losing weight like that. I mean, the weight was dropping off. I didn't have an appetite. So there was no appetite. So, we would just continue to run around, and it was innocent then. There wasn't a layer to it that got dirty. Eventually my drug log gets extremely dirty, to the point where I'm selling heroin and I am intravenously using. And so, I just remember back then it was different, and I felt like every unworthiness, unlovable, disgusting feeling, the molestation, all the problems and trials and tribulations of my past, all the garbage, my dad not saying this to me, my mom acting this way when she found out I was gay, like all of that just went away with one hit. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden I felt like I was a Superman.
What age were you when that happened?
18.
Okay, so you were literally right turning as an adult. Of course, your dad had you at 15, so he can't say a whole.
No, not at all. And sorry, my nose is leaking.
Too much meth. Just kidding.
I know, for real. No, I've been doing the outdoor track. I know, I got a deviant septum. No, I got that fixed. Okay, but so anyways, 18 years old. on meth. About 6 months later, I had my own apartment, and I got really strung out on meth, lost my job at Motown Cafe. Basically, 1 month later, got evicted, broke into the apartment that I got evicted. They had the padlock on, so I got arrested 3 times in 1 week. My stepdad was really abusive to my mother. He would take pots of hot spaghetti and throw it at her face. So this time in particular, I took a lighter to his skin. I started burning his skin as we had him down on the ground because I was so sick of him abusing my mom and holding her in chokeholds. And so I went to jail and got OR'd for breaking into my own apartment, even though, well, I guess it wasn't mine anymore because I got evicted, but it had all my stuff in there. So I was, justified at 18. It's my place. And then I got arrested for stealing clothes out of Dillard's because it was the first time in my entire life I was homeless. So I went in there and got underwear. And then I also got arrested for domestic violence for beating up my dad. He got arrested too because he hit my mom and then threw the hot spaghetti on her. So 3 times in 1 week, I remember, oh, shoot, I have a problem. Like all of a sudden I have an arrest record, and it was insanity. And that was the beginning of just kind of how that life began. I got into ecstasy, acid. I started going to raves. I found a sense of community, people that would love me and bring me into their circle. And that was fun and interesting and still kind of experimentational. And then from there, I got into crack cocaine, and crack cocaine basically took me to my knees, and I was homeless. I was living underneath the bleachers at the 50-yard line at Las Vegas High School, downtown Las Vegas off Fremont Street. And I was panhandling every day for liquor and for hits of crack. And I was basically bathing in the El Cortez bathroom. I was shaving in there. And I mean, if you saw me back then, I looked like a blonde, return missionary. I didn't look like somebody that was addicted to crack cocaine, but I was the only kid on the block that was looking for crack that was this white.
Tell me something. So when you were in the throes of that, and of course you were young still, but I know you remember that time in your life. You're sharing a very vivid story, by the way. I'm loving your story. At that time, if people gave you money, what would you have rather them have done? Because they didn't know you weren't hungry. I'm sure you held up I'm hungry, give me money for food, but then you money for the drugs. And a lot of people are skeptical that way. That's why I keep little snacks and food and water in my car. So if I see people say they're hungry, I'll grab that and I'll hand it out my window to them. So if they're truly hungry, they now have water and food.
Yeah.
That what you would have loved for them to have done, and then you would have been
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that the crux of it, the root of it all is, there was addiction happening. There was substance use and probably some mental health happening there. So of course, a person passing by is not going to be able to necessarily offer that. Food and water, and anybody in that situation definitely needs that. Are they going to admit that they actually want that? Because why wouldn't you rather collect money and go get a 40-ounce of beer or some vodka or some whiskey to drown your sorrows? Because that is going to feel much better than a sandwich.
Oh, I recently got to the farmer's market, and it's in downtown where I live here in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And so I parked a little up the hill. It's a little far away from because a lot of people at the farmer's market. And where I parked, I saw this man, these two men actually, but one man walking towards me from a motorcycle. You could tell he was kind of scruffed up. He was homeless, motorcycle. And he said, "Hey man, come here." He was a little bit inebriated. I could smell the alcohol on his breath. Yeah. And he said, "Hungry, can you give me some money?" I said, "No, but there's a farmer's market I'm going to. Let me go buy you some food." "Well, I can't eat any of that food." I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Well, I'm diabetic." I'm like, "You ran into the right person today, because I know how to diabetes."
Yeah. They don't.
I go get him some food and get all my food and everything, and I come back. I hand it to him. I give him the rest of all the waters in my car. There was 20 or 30 of them in there. Gave him all of those. And as soon as I handed him his food, he looked at the bag, he threw it on the ground. He said, "I don't want this shit. I want your money." I was like, oh my God. I just was shocked, because here I am. Number one, he he was a big African American dude. I'm a big white dude, but dude, I was like, gulp, am I going to get killed out here? and,
Yeah.
and he was running up to people. I'm like, dude, don't do that. Like, you're scaring women. Luckily, I'm big enough that I don't think you were going to mess with me, but these women, they don't know what you're going to do. But I was just shocked that there was no gratitude. But I guess when you're addicted, you don't have that in your mentality.
Well, not only addiction, right? You also got to take into consideration, like, you have to be at your lowest point of life to be able to put yourself in a situation to grovel for something. And even if it is a pretense of saying that I want this or I need that on a sign or what have you, like, it just, you're already pretty much at your lowest point ever. So it's already super humiliating when you don't get what you want, because you're not going to be in a state of honesty and say, hey, this is what I want. I want to get loaded because my life sucks.
Although the phrase beggars can't be choosers is definitely,
Yeah.
take the food, even if you have to sell food to get money, like, take the food.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
to eat. I know you said you lost a lot of weight when you went on meth, but like, at some point you do have to have some food.
Yeah.
And by the way, his friend was over sitting on a log and he was just like,
Oh.
hell, he was way out of what he was on, alcohol, drugs, whatever he was on, but he wasn't even hardly moving.
Yeah. 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 It's a hard place to be. So I was panhandling in Las Vegas, and that just got ugly. The crack cocaine got heavier and heavier. Um, my heart was like feeling like it was literally going to explode out of my chest. The come down was horrible. You just had to go get more in order for you not to come down. The people in wheelchairs and just the schizophrenia and the insanity and just the lower level spiritually, you just deal with a realm of spirituality that is so dark and demonic, and it's scary. It was really scary just to be in those times and know that whatever is out there, whatever higher power or guardian angels I had were looking out for me, because I was in situations where people get so loaded that there's guns involved and you just say the wrong thing or you look the wrong way. And I already was not fitting in, as a personality. I mean, I had an air about me because I had a life before this. So I would sometimes come off a little bit arrogant or egotistical because I knew better. And so I would sometimes present like that. And I don't think that it was really well received when people were just like, we want to get down, let's get down, shut the hell up. So anyways, that turns into a life of crime. And because you have to somehow start to fund your addiction. And so what I started doing was, I went into Bank of America, and I basically, the computer screen was turned like this. Me and my grandfather have the exact same name. I had a bank account because I was a food server in Vegas at this point for like 12 years. So I'd always drop my tips in there every night. And they pull up both the accounts, and I see the last four of my grandpa's social. I repeat them back to him because I had $0 in my account. They give me an ATM card. I go out to the ATM. I had been homeless at this point for 9 months. $500 drops with my brand new PIN. And I remember thinking, thank you. Like, I could go shower. I can go, of course, a week later, I'm like so hard into doing way more drugs with grandpa's money at this point. And I had taken out $5,000 by the time I got caught by the feds. Went back into Bank of America. He dropped the charges. The federal, because it's an bank institution, they picked up the charges. They go in there with rifles, canine unit. Literally, it was like a scene out of a movie. Get on the floor! Ah! Everyone's screaming, and I'm looking back, and all I see are all these guns, and all I want is another hit of crack. And so I dropped to the ground, and I'm like putting my arms up, and they arrest me to get me in the back of the car. And they're like, "We've been looking for you," and they had me on all these cameras in downtown Las Vegas, and I was hanging out with all these people that they were trying to arrest that were selling large quantities of crack cocaine. Of course, the people that sell it don't do it. They all just sell it and make exorbitant amount of money. But they were trying to find these people that basically cook it and create it and distribute it. Well, anyways, they had me now on a federal charge, and so they take me into jail. I'm in there for like 9 months. I get out of jail. I try to go back to get crack. It's New Year's Eve. I have $700 in my pocket, waiting tables. I made great tips that night. gay bashed and by these crack dealers, and they rip off all my clothes. They're trying to find the money. They know that I have a large amount of money. The one guy steel toe boots me to the thing, shattered my jaw. Have to have that wired shut for like 3 months. The best diet ever, by the way. And so, then I go back to jail, and I'm in jail, and I get back out. I go to the gay bars. I get roofied. I'm driving my car. I crash through the gates at McCarran Airport. I'm up on the cargo tarmac. I'm now in my vehicle, and I'm looking up, and I wake up, and I'm on this street that has lights on it, but I'm literally on an airway tarmac. I had no idea at the time. I'm like, God, this is beautiful. I had Rufinol in my system. Thank God they did a blood test. They took me to the hospital. They found out, so the charges got lessened versus me, destroying federal property like McCarran Airport. But it just, the insanity that I was living in was just anything and everything to get attention, because I learned early on that you weren't going to get good attention, but you definitely were going to get negative attention.
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low-carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.
Look, you learned it. Your story, as incredibly traumatic as it is in adulthood, we have to go back to all that chaos in your childhood with all the everything. There were cool things that happened in the midst of it, but it's like that chaos, and then the sexual abuse that you had for a decade. I think all of that fed into who you became as an adult, that led you down this path to always trying to get that hit, and then it became a literal hit. And I guess you were seeking a dopamine and even affirmation of who you were. That's been whole life up until this point in your story.
Yeah. It just, and back then I I'm an Aries. I'm a fire sign. I love to push the buttons. I love to poke the bear. I just love that. I was addicted to that reaction. And nobody could tell me what to do. Like, you got me mistaken. Do you know who I am? Do you know who my grandfather is? Do you know my grandfather? Opens and close. Like, he's a pilot. So he opens runways with the governor. I worked for the lieutenant governor. So you have all this name dropping clout, Las Vegas BS that works for you up until it doesn't work for you anymore, And so it did work for a long time. Stuart Bell, the district attorney, was my grandfather's best friend. I'd always drop his name. I'd walk into a court hearing where I was supposed to have felony charges, and they're like, the attorney comes up to me and goes, "You need to leave. It's already been dismissed." And I was like, "It has?" And he's like, "Yeah, but we can't have you showing up here." And I was like, "All right." I was like, "Cool, Grandpa did me a solid." But that started to run dry, and
was it the same grandpa you stole $5,000 from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He loved me very, very, very much. But he was, World War II, came over here to escape all the chaos over there in Italy. And
Italy, yeah.
Yeah, he had no concept of what drug addiction. He just knew what workaholic is, but he didn't know what drug addiction was. So he had no way to understand how to help me. He loved me a lot. Loved me a lot. He was the coolest guy when I came out of the closet. He came up to me and he goes, "Battista, I worked in Hollywood for years. I know tons of amazing gay performers, gay waiters, gay hairdressers, everything." He goes, "Just be a good person. That's all I care about." And he was like, very macho, like triathlete. He rode, just big personality. And out of everyone that I came into contact with, it gives me chills remembering how he accepted me after that moment.
That's cool. Especially
Yeah.
when parents rejected you, it was cool that you had one family member that did not.
Yeah. Dad was really cool. Actually, mom thought it was her fault because she was a female and she raised me around a lot of, they used to sunbathe naked back then in Las Vegas. You would just, the women would talk to the waitress, they'd come over to see my mom, they'd be two cosmopolitans that do it, and they'd be laying out nude. And that was like, that's, you know, if you ever, what's his name? There was a movie called Running with Scissors. It reminds me a lot about my life, but yeah, that was kind of normal. The 70s, the 80s, that was, you know, everyone's nude in the backyard. It's like, okay. Like,
Not in my 70s and 80s childhood.
I know. Yeah, I know. It definitely wasn't the wonder years, but Las Vegas was super, super liberal.
Yeah. It still kind of is. So,
Yeah. And my dad was a punk rocker, so the
yeah.
only place that punk rockers could go to was the gay bars. It was the only place that they were accepted
Wow.
without getting beat up. So he was super cool. But anyway, so yeah, I go now to prison for 2 years because I couldn't stay clean, and they kept drug testing me. And Donald Mosley, I'll never remember it. I was the only person in the courtroom. They had gone through the whole docket. My mom and my best friend were in the back, and I swore that I was going to get put back on probation because I was a first-time offender. And he goes, "We're revoking and we're sending you to serve your sentence in Indian Springs." And down came the gavel. And I remember looking back at my mom, and I was in shackles, and I looked at my best friend, and I went down this long concrete tunnel all by myself with the bailiff. And I remember,
Indian Spring, at the rehab place?
no, Indian Springs is a prison, a men's
Oh,
prison. Yeah, yeah. And I just remember going down the long concrete under walkway in Las Vegas. It was underneath Las Vegas Boulevard. And it's where they, you know, move all the prisoners back and forth to court to their rooms. And I just remember thinking, my life is freaking done. I'm going to prison.
how
You know,
old?
like 21. I was just about 21. I turned 21 in there.
You couldn't even drink yet, and you were already heavy on drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a fake ID. Yeah, so and then spent 2 years in there. I then at that point, you know, I was gonna do the Atkins and restrictive dieting. And so I smoked weed my first week there. I got so paranoid. And I remember telling myself, I'm not doing drugs in here. No way. I'm not going to add more to my sentence. I am the master of my own ship. I'm going to like do something different. And so I started running the track. I like walked a lap, you know, a quarter mile, and then I ran. And then I walked, and then I ran. And then I built up to 2 miles. And I was really restrictive when we went to eat. I ate none of the bread, none of the carbs. All I ate was the protein. And I basically was emaciated. You know, when I got out of there, I was emaciated. But and it was like the beginning of like some type of, eating disorder. And you know, anyways, punishment. I was punishing myself, right? And so I get out, and then I was, you know, skinnier. I was at probably 176, and I was trying to find love, and I couldn't find love. Nobody wanted me as skinny. Nobody wanted me as fat. So I was like, I'm just still a piece of crap. So I went back to drugs and alcohol. So this then gets me, I'm going to project forward because I know we're not going to be here forever. But 2009, I move out of Las Vegas to transfer my probation to Southern Utah. My grandparents sold in 2005 to Harrah's, and he moved to Southern Utah. And so my dad shortly thereafter followed. And I was I called my dad up and I said, Dad, I need help. I can't stop doing crack. I just cannot, you know, I'm going to Red Lobster. I'm working all day. I'm making tips and I'm taking all my tips and I'm smoking crack every night. And like one of the churches is paying for our rent. And like, my existence is horrible. And I'm drinking vodka to come down so that I can go to work the next day. And like, I can't do this anymore. My dad's like, okay, get your butt in gear. I'll send you some money for gas and get up here. I remember smoking crack the whole way up there on the I-15.
Can't hear you, bro.
Can you hear me now?
The last thing you said was, I remember smoking crack all the way on and then you cut out.
Yeah. So I was smoking crack all the way on the I-15. And I put my do not disturb on my settings so that it would not do this. And it always one gets
It's
through.
all good, brother. Keep going.
Okay. So anyways, yeah, I was smoking crack the entire way up there, and I remember like being so paranoid that, you know, everything behind me was a cop in the rearview mirror. And I get up to southern Utah to Parowan. So I go from like 3.5 million city population to 2,000 people, and they're all country. And I'm, you know, Battista. At this point, I was, you know, pretty flaming, and I've calmed down quite a bit from my early days. But I'm like smack dab in the middle of like cows and hee haw, and like, you know, just yeah, Republican Nation. And I was just like, ah.
Oh, and let me repeat that phrase: smack dab in the middle of cows and yeehaw.
Yeah, pretty much.
You just described where I live, brother.
Yes, and my mom has lived in West Virginia. I mean, my partner is from Virginia, so I mean, I'm well aware of, like, I mean, today I live in Southern Utah, but it's I've been able to morph into it, but it's been a process.
So, Battista, your story is unbelievable. Eventually, you did become sober, as I read in your bio, and clean and serene, as you call it, September 20th, 2016. I want to know how you got into keto and carnivore, how all that you went through in the past, you kind of it's helping you be clean and sober and serene. Tell that story.
Yeah. So I started carnivore. I started keto, or Atkins, a version of Atkins, in 2009. And then I relapsed on drugs and alcohol twice. And so I went back out pretty hard. I basically then decided that I was going to do it a day at a time, and the whole recovery thing with drugs and alcohol, and I was going to address my darkest demons. And so I started the whole therapy thing, and I did a lot of therapy. I did EMDR. I did, you know, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes.
The list goes on. Dialectical. I did moral behavioral. There was just so much therapy that I did.
Did you ever do shock?
No. And I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, I had a guy on here, I think last year I interviewed him. Nathan was his name. And he's carnivore now as well. And carnivore kind of calmed down a lot of the things that he needed therapy for some of the mental health and psychological issues he was dealing with. And he said the thing that he did, and he was torn about it like you are, how you didn't know how you felt about it, but he did shock therapy. And I was like, oh, like, how was that? And he was telling this sordid tale. I forget Nathan's last name, but he's Nathan Does Voices here on Instagram. Go look it up. A really fascinating interview if you want to check it out.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I just got heavy into the therapy, and I decided, okay, so I'm starting to harness that addiction. Now there's a common saying that you put down the spoon because you cook your heroin and your meth in your spoon, and you pick up the fork. So you harness one addiction, and then another, the disease of addiction resurfaces somewhere. You start cross-addicting. So I was cross-addicting with food. I was cross-addicting with exercise. And so I got into Atkins, and then Atkins turned into keto. Then the keto craze was like nuts. Like everybody was on YouTube, and you had Keto Connect, and like just all these people were like basically blogging real life stories on like how they live keto. And I was like, I need to live keto. And I was mimicking and imitating everything that they did with minimal results because I'm not them. I have a different body. Come to find out, I'm figuring that out in carnivore. But yeah, I thought that, if you did X, Y, and Z, you're going to get X, Y, and Z results. And unfortunately, that's not always the case, right? There might be a little bit of truth that if you start eating an animal-based or meat-based diet, you're going to see results. But anyways, so that was my journey into keto. And then keto, I stayed there for quite some time. And keto, I started doing exercise as well. I started going to the gym. I was doing the outdoor track. I was getting my steps in. And I felt really good. I felt balanced. I was still addicted to these like cheat days, right? And so first it was like cheat month. And then as long as I could get back in, like, the next day I was golden. And then the scale like would drop all that water weight. I also started getting into cheat days once a week. And I was finding that I was still losing 2 to 3 pounds a week, even with that cheat day. Well, the cheat day started becoming super addictive. Like, first it was just like one cheat meal. And then it was like me and my girlfriend downstairs that lived in the apartment below me, we were both doing keto. And our cheat day, we would start, like, it was the one cheat meal to begin. And then all of a sudden we were getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning. We're like, I'm like, are you awake? She's like, yeah, I'm awake. I'm like, you want to go to Starbucks? They're open. Let's go get a 2,000 calorie frappuccino and like a cinnamon scone or this. Okay. So we do that, and then we come home, have a sugar crash, and we'd want to take a nap. And we're like, it's like we just woke up. Now we're wanting to nap. It was just, so, I started seeing, okay, that's a problem. And then it wasn't until almost about 6 months ago, my partner Brandon, he gained about close to like 80 pounds when he got off methamphetamines. And so he's been clean, coming up on 3 years. And so he said, he turned to me and he goes, I'm thinking about doing keto. And I said, well, I have just started finding out between you, there was Judy, Carnivore Yogi, Steak and Butter Gal, Carnivore Cast. There's a bunch of people that I was like, and finding all the, the YouTube videos, and I was like, just so interested in it. Baker, what's his name? The other Rogan. And so I started I'm like, I need to mimic what they're doing, and I need to be them. And so I came to the carnivore space with the intention of losing tons of weight, at least that last bit that I wanted, you know what I mean? And so I basically I was kind of I don't know, so there's a really interesting article I just read that there's two different types of people that come to carnivore. One of them that is Brandon, and Brandon is my partner. Brandon is coming from Arby's, Wendy's, McDonald's at 3 a.m, cheese puffs. Yeah. He just basically went from that to carnivore one day.
Right.
Like, just switched.
Which, by the way, not recommended, because that's hardcore.
Yeah. Well, as long as we buy the food together, and if I prepare it, he does the dishes, and he'll eat it and lose the weight. But so that's our agreement. But he switched, and he did okay. And of course, he's dropping like crazy, right? Me, on the other hand, I have middled and, played with all different types, from Weight Watchers to HCG, where I was, doing the 500 calories a day and the shots in the stomach and the pellets under the mouth. And I was doing paleo and Whole30 and what's it called? The beach diet.
South Beach.
And I was doing Atkins, and I was doing anything that you threw my way, I would do. So when I came, I actually went up 13, 15, 17 pounds. I was like, of course I'm pissed because he's losing the most. And I had already lost at that point 100. So my body was already at a, metabolically damaged, and had been in such calorie deficit for so long that I think it was like, oh, food, good food, nutritious food, and butter. Like, I'm going to hold on to this for a second because it's, so two different
Keto Chow is a customizable shake mix that is also perfect for cooking and baking, giving you simple, nutritionally perfect meal options. Keto Chow. Make keto easy. Discover your favorite flavor at jimmylovesketochow.com.
When you undereat calories, this is kind of the misnomer of like the calorie restriction hypothesis is when you undereat calories, your body thinks you're going into starvation. And so it will hold on to things. This is why what I love about carnivore and what Sean Baker and different ones are talking about, eat it and eat it to satiety. And you should be able to go long periods of time without eating, but eat a crap load. Like I loved when Sean Baker was doing his ribeye only kind of experiment this couple of years ago, and all he was doing was just eating like 4 or 5 ribeyes every single day.
Yeah.
You eat a crap load of calories. Of course, he was also doing a lot of exercise as well, strength building exercise. But you So on that, but you got to eat enough.
Yeah, exactly. So we have, in the course of 6 months on carnivore, let me give you my diagnoses. Borderline personality, anxiety disorder, panic disorder from the PTSD from molestation, the bipolar 2, manic depressive disorder. So on that, I was on, because I'm an addict in recovery from drugs and alcohol, I'm on no Schedule 1 narcotics. So they had me on all non-narcotic health medications.
Do they
In the
work?
Yes, they do actually.
Good.
In the course of 6 months, though, on carnivore, I have been able to get off all of them.
Wow. See, that's the thing that I think we don't emphasize enough. I know you said you kind of started keto because you heard about the weight loss benefits, and same with kind of carnivore. But I think the mental health benefits are so underrepresented when we articulate it. You hear me talk about it, and there's a few others out there talking about it here and there with different guests. But that mental benefit that happens, in fact, when I was writing Keto Clarity, I talked about the mental clarity that you, when you start eating as Dr. Berry calls it, the proper human diet. When you start eating that way, your body can't help but respond in positive ways. And this right here, the biggest place that it responds.
Yeah. I felt the carnivore zen. You feel so much better, especially when I was eating more fat. I felt a lot better when I was eating. Carnivore yogi Sarah told me one time, buy some beef suet and just buy little crumpets of it.
Yes.
Eat that.
Yes.
And it was like literally like taking a mental health medication, because throughout the day, I am now the operations manager for 7 sober living houses, and I have 176 different clients under me that are in early kind of traumatic recovery from drugs and alcohol, and they're seeking housing. And so I'm processing a lot of information really fast. And sometimes not on the right diet, when I have inflammation, right, I'm going to be more reactive. But when I was eating that beef suet, I was like, okay, like everything's going to be okay.
And it stands to reason, because your brain is comprised of 70% fat.
Yeah.
And been told, well, you need to feed it enough carbs so your brain will function. I'm like, no. Prioritize protein, obviously, but the natural fats that come with that, and your brain will be just fine. Like it's amazing the
remarkable
believe out there about nutrition. And when it comes to the noggin, give me all the saturated fat.
Yeah, so getting off of the health medications was a huge thing. Trust me and believe me, I'm telling you what, Jimmy, like if you would have told me when I first came to carnivore, like you're going to be like, lead with the healing. And I'm like, I don't care about the healing. I want to lose 12 pounds. Like I came here to like, that, because that's always been at the forefront. It's always been about the aesthetic.
Right. And because even culturally, that's what we've been told. Look, my story getting into this was the Atkins Diet, losing 180 pounds. Now on this 100-day journey that I'm doing, the whole sabbatical to 50, and it's not about weight loss at all. I just want to feel good. I want my mindset to be right. And body composition changes. But at the end of the day, pursuing it and not having any parameters on it, I think it's such a good mental way to deal with this and not put all this pressure on yourself. I want to lose 100 pounds, which you have, but that's not a goal that might be attainable for some people, and nor should it be. Just let your body do what it's going to do, but you eat right with a positive attitude every day, which is, again, why I love you call yourself Joyful Carnivore, because you're like, look, be happy. Eating bacon and pork belly and steak and all the things you get to have. This is a joyful diet, unlike the low-fat diets and all the other that we've had to suffer with for decades.
Oh, I've done that. Yeah. And then you have, of course, I started going down the rabbit hole of, protein sparing modified fast, and everyone's having results. And I could do that, but I like being happy. So if
it's an intensive program, and there are good benefits for people, but sustainable for a lifetime, probably not so much, but maybe for a period of time to get things moving, I do think it can be beneficial. I know my friend Maria Emmerich is a big fan of PSMF. And so, so let's, because we're coming up on time now, how are you today? You're 5 years, so you're coming up on your 5-year anniversary. What's that feel like, man, of being clean and sober and serene? Like, what's that like?
It's the most self-affirming, or how do you say that?
Affirming?
Self-affirming. I'm a grad student. So it's, the most self-affirming level of self-care and love that I can ever imagine that I'm giving myself, because, it's such a cool journey. I believe that whatever positive energy is out there, whatever, the captain of the universe, God, whatever spirit, Buddha, spirit of the universe, whatever you believe, that energy source, that vibration out there that harnesses you and gets you into a good space when you're choosing the next right thing. Like I have made so many remarkable decisions and choices because of putting that stuff down, and my true potential, which they used to say used to drive me crazy. I'd have cops pull me over and go, "Do you realize how much potential you have?" I'm like, "I don't want to hear about that. I just want to get messed up." And but yeah, it's like, and addicts are amazing. They have such, to be able to get in a car and go to Las Vegas 3 times in one day to go buy drugs, and go in the darkest and deepest pits of hell in Las Vegas to get those drugs. If you put that negative energy down, and then you go to the positive side where you're actually doing good for your life, you're motivated, and you have a drive and passion that most people are floored with.
Yeah. Guys, his name is Battista Locatelli. Go check him out. Joyful Carnivore. It does not want there it is.
There we go. Yeah.
You saw it for a moment. Joyful Carnivore on
floating in the clouds in my picture.
Yes, yeah. You're emanating such light. It blew up the screen there. But dude, you are amazing. Please do something for me. As an author of 9 books, writing my 10th one, you need to write your story. I think amazing to get it out there. I will personally help you with that in any way you want. So let's stay in touch. And then number 2, you need to podcast. And I know I say that to several people, but you've got the it for both a book and a podcast. I've seen a lot of people over the years. You've got the it factor. Dude, if that's a passion of your heart, I think you've got the moxie and you've got all the everything. If you feel like you're ready, I don't want to push you into something you don't think, but I think you are ready. Based shared here today. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's such a privilege and an honor to be here. And thank you for paving the way. And I intensely appreciate what you just shared with me. I'm in one of those scary spaces of graduating, right, with your master's. And so a lot of mental energy is going to writing the dissertation and the thesis and all that stuff. So if I come out of there with blazing colors, my hopes in the future is to do telehealth and to hopefully be able to offer people that are following me under the nutritional part of carnivore, and maybe, spend an hour with me as a therapist. So We'll see where that brings me, but thank you.
You like the cops were telling you when you were high on meth and all the on crack and everything else, you do have a future. You have a very bright one. So thank you. Tired of playing the mask game? Me too. That's why I wanted to tell you about the Unmask. This is a breathable, completely breathable. It covers, you can't even see that it's breathable, but it's breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is, but when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different, but it's breathable, baby. Playthemaskgame.com.